So, I was rewatching some of my old videos and looking over some of my old photos, and I just sort of wondered, what the hell happened? I was on track. I went to high school. I got good grades. Although I didn't get into the university that I wanted to get into, I got into McMaster, which is still a very good university. From there, I then competed and got into my select stream of engineering, which was computer engineering. It was all a very systematic sequence of events. And now I'm wishing that I could live my life prior to such events from happening. It's like life took its course, things happened to me, and now I'm here. It's like that otherworldly feeling that you get when you gain consciousness at 5 years old, and I can hardly believe that I'm 21 myself. As I come to grips with my aspirations and or goals, and more specifically how I fail to meet them, I find myself escaping into my past as a sort of coping mechanism. It's often scary the ways in which I indulge in this coping mechanism, because it sets a sort of narrative for your life that always wants you wanting/wishing for something else. Something that isn't quite real. Things were so much simpler back then. I had nothing to worry about. I miss these people, this place, the school I used to go to, the people I used to converse with on a day-to-day basis. I have new things to consider. I have to consider my career, money, and finding someone to settle down with. Certainly, these thoughts and ideas didn't manifest out of thin air. They were given a birthplace. They were implanted, so to speak. And the interesting thing about this is these sorts of seeds and or ideas, I believe most of which you guys can relate to, we didn't come up with them. They were given to us. What I'm trying to say is that these issues, these problems, these stresses, they were taught to us, to some extent, varying degrees of responsibility, of course. Easily provable by the sentiments that we're told growing up. Teenage years are some of the best of your life. You have no responsibilities, no commitments. You don't have to take responsibility for anyone's life but yourself. People tend to echo these sentiments to me when I discuss any problems that I'm having. Like it's my fault that I was born later. Like it's my fault that I'm younger. Essentially, what people do when they give you these sentiments and they tell you in response to your issues, in a roundabout way, they're saying you don't know how good you have. I think that's a very dangerous mindset to have, because it gives you the tools to constantly romanticize your past and lament what happens in the future. When I was 12, I was nostalgic about preschool. When I was 15, I was nostalgic about elementary school. When I was 18, I was nostalgic about early high school. And when I'm 21, I'm nostalgic about late high school/early university. I believe we can all attest to the romanticization of the past through memes, videos, blogs. You find it most often the case that the people who echo these are no older than me. Max, they might be 25. And it's funny to hear this, because it's like you were born just a couple years ago. 20 years is not that long. So what gives us the confidence to say how our lives will go? Now I notice my cycles of self-loathing, because the coveted pre-COVID era is when YouTube was better, when gaming was better, when content creation was better, and when I felt more content. However, this conclusion was only drawn in retrospect. Of course, you can't feel nostalgic in the present. That's impossible. However, it's also erroneous to assume that your happiness will continue to decrease until you die of old age, God willing. I, however, still hold out that the best years of my life and the best experiences of my life are still yet to be experienced, to be discovered. I think having a peak in your life, concept-wise, is very unnatural and synthetic. Engage in a thought experiment with me. Let's say there's this omnipotent genie, and he knows the entire trajectory of your life, from birth to death. He knows what's going to happen, what time's it going to happen, and how is it going to happen, and the consequences of all actions. And he enters your life at your happiest possible moment. Let's pick a random age. Let's say 35. He comes to you and says, "All right, man, you did it. You've reached peak happiness. Nothing you can do or will ever do can top this. This is it. And it's all downhill from here." That conclusion would be soul-crushing, assuming that you believe him and that he's telling the absolute truth. However, I think this experiment becomes more interesting when you take into account that you had not known that that would be your happiest moment before it was your happiest moment. Meaning that prior towards 35, you probably thought memories of when you were 12, of when you were 18, of when you were 25, of even when you were 27, were the happiest moments of your life. Because you opened yourself to the possibility of experiencing better things, of having more impactful memories, that you were able to then gain such experience. If you put a cap on whatever you can gain, then of course nothing else can live up to it. What I believe can be defined as happiness is incredibly hard to quantify. It's multifaceted, it fluctuates day to day, and it also fluctuates because we as people constantly edit the metadata. When I was going through my first couple of years of university, I thought it was actually the worst time in my life. I'd never been so stressed, I never ate so little, and I never found myself so recluse. However, I look back and those were some really great years. And this is even evident in my life because do you think I'm really nostalgic about preschool? Fuck no. I'm nostalgic about my life that was 2, 3, or even 4 years ago. Nostalgia poisoning is how I would like to coin this sort of maladaptive coping mechanism. It nullifies your ability to engage with the present world because you're not here. You're where you were 3 years ago. However, it's not even to a vivid extent because you're just replaying memories that slowly begin to fade and fade and fade until you just remember the emotions. When I remember my first and second year, I remember sharp, sometimes painful emotions of happiness and sadness. Do I remember the day-to-day? It inhibits your ability to be happy and find happiness. It's an awesome maladaptation of memories. No longer are they something that you can reflect upon. It's something that you could be incredibly envious about. Years will slip by and you won't realize how good of a life that you're living. Become nostalgic enough and life itself becomes memory. You become lost in it. Videos, moments, pictures, and snapshots, never interfacing with reality itself, because only this moment is real. Keep looking back, keep poisoning yourself with nostalgia, and you might miss your whole fucking life.